We are more than halfway through March, and I have only read one of the books that I said I was going to read for the middle grade March prompts. That book was The Witch of Blackbird Pond, which I very much enjoyed. I really loved the themes. It was about this girl who's looking for a place to belong and a place to call home and someone to call family and friends, and it was really, really well done. It was way cozier than I expected. With the title The Witch of Blackbird Pond, I was expecting there to be more like witch trials, which there kind of is, but it was not as intense as I expected it to be. It is about a girl in a Puritan settlement in North America, and I definitely expected this story to be a lot more intense and more dramatic than it was. It felt really cozy to me, and I really enjoyed that. The writing was really well done. I was drawn into the story right from the very beginning, and I'm now interested in more books by this author, and I'm interested in checking out more of the Newbery winners because I've pretty much ignored the Newbery books until now, and I read this one and I'm like, now I'm really curious because I bet the other ones are good too. Anyway, that's the only one that I read that I was going to read for the middle grade March prompts. And now I'm going to try to read more of the books. I'm currently reading Dealing with Dragons, which I'm about 50 pages from the end. I'm going to try to finish this today. I'm really enjoying this, but this does not fit any of the middle grade March prompts. So I'm going to finish this and then I'm going to get back to basically my middle grade March TBR.
Just want to show you guys that it is really snowing right now. I don't know how well you can see it, but it's a good day to stay inside and read.
So I finished reading Dealing with Dragons, and I'm disappointed by the ending. Honestly, this is a book about a girl who doesn't want to be a princess. She is told that she can only do certain things that are like for proper princesses, and she doesn't want to do that, and she wants to have adventures in the world. And she runs away and she meets up with dragons, and she ends up living with a dragon, and adventures ensues. I really like how spunky our protagonist is. I really like her relationship with the dragons. I really like getting to learn more about how the dragons lived. I think the strongest thing in this book is the characters and the characters' relationships. I don't know how to pronounce these names for sure, but I'm going to say Cimarine and Kazul. Kazul being the dragon and Cimarine being our princess. And their relationship is just beautiful to watch unfold, and I really like how they learn to look out for each other and care for each other, and how they're not a typical dragon princess relationship. I really like that Cimarine is able to just be who she is, and she's not going to let convention and typical expectancies for a princess to stop her from doing what she wants. That said, I did feel like our entire setup of the book is not resolved in any way throughout the book. She basically runs away, and anything that happened prior to that is totally unimportant, and she doesn't really care about anyone she left behind. And I'm left feeling conflicted because when I read the author's note in the beginning, whenever the author wrote this book, she did not intend for it to have sequels, and I'm just feeling like if that was not resolved in the first book, maybe it'll be resolved in the sequel, but I do feel like that was just like a plot thread that was left open and nothing really happened to it. The other thing is every single fairy tale that you can ever imagine exists in this world. King Arthur exists in this world, The Wizard of Oz exists in this world, Sleeping Beauty exists in this world, and it leaves the world building very confusing. Basically, there is no world building, and anything can happen because of magic. Now, it is very much like a fairy tale. It has fairy tale feels. It's very whimsical, and I did enjoy that part of the book, but at the same time, some things would happen, and it's like, oh, because magic, and I kind of get frustrated at that. The author did try to set up the magic stuff that was going to be needed in the resolution earlier in the book, but I honestly feel like there wasn't enough setup, and it was kind of, at times there was things that were set up that was like, we're definitely going to need this later in the story. And there were things that happened in the end of the book that weren't directly set up and were just kind of an expansion of the magic that we kind of knew about already. I don't know. Basically, the characters were good, the atmosphere of the whimsy was good, but the plot sucks. Whoops. Did I just say the plot sucks? Yeah, I did. I will be continuing on with this series, but I think I'm going to go into the following books with lowered expectations. I'm really just there for the characters and not for the plot, because I'm not really expecting good plots at this point. That said, this book reminds me a lot of The Two Princesses of Bamarre, which I read when I was a young person. And I really enjoyed this one as a young person. I will give the caveat, these are middle grade books, so I'm being hypercritical of dealing with dragons, but maybe if I read it when I was younger, I would enjoy it and it would be like a super fun book. But reading it as an adult, I don't know, I have critiques. So The Two Princesses of Bamarre, I remember there being more consequences to things that happened in the story. I remember, like, I mean, even the whole end, the resolution, there was like serious things that are changed like basically forever because of things that happened in the story. And I just feel like this is possibly a better version of dealing with dragons. Obviously the story is much different, and the person that goes on the adventure actually only goes on the adventure because she has to and absolutely does not want to go on the adventure. So obviously the characters and their personalities are very different, but I feel like some of the things that happened kind of made me think of this book. Like, I think they're comparable in some ways, and I want to go back and reread this book. Like, does this hold up? Do I remember this correctly, and does it hold up to my expectations? I just went over to the mailroom and I got an exciting package. My previous Kindle died. It was a really old 3rd generation Kindle that I got secondhand, and it no longer holds battery. Even when I have it plugged in, I can kind of get it to turn on, but then it doesn't stay on even while it's plugged in. So I decided to get a new Kindle. Now this is not a new Kindle because I had a little bit of sticker shock. Oh my gosh, brand new Kindles are kind of expensive. So I have a old secondhand Kindle. I can't remember if this is 7th or 8th generation, but it's definitely newer than the one I had been using. So I'm excited to open this up and see if I can get it to work. Let's see. Oh my gosh. So we got the charger, which is very nice. And here we go. Look at that. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's see if it has battery right now. It does. Oh, I don't know how I feel about that. This is like very lit up. My previous one was not lit up like this. But let's see. Can I turn the backlight off? Let's go to settings. Brightness. Ooh, I can turn it down. Oh, that looks a lot more like the one that I had previously. That's what I wanted, because I don't really want the, well, I'm okay with the backlight, but I don't really want it too bright. I don't want it to look like I'm reading off of a screen. I really hate reading with the Kindle app on my phone. I prefer it to look more like a sheet of paper that I'm reading off of. So yay, I can turn that down. That's awesome. I'm gonna need to figure out how to set it up with my Amazon account. So I will do that and I'll be right back. I'm back. I have my Kindle all set up. It was very easy to do. This is definitely a more modern device than the one I had previously. I already downloaded a book from the library that I'm going to be reading on here. It's The Great Bear, which is the 2nd book in the Misewa saga. I just finished that book in February. I'll have that in my February wrap up. Absolutely loved the first one, which is The Barren Grounds, and now I'm ready to read the second one. Definitely going to be doing that this evening. That's a building. This is like, the snow pile is up to like a first floor building. Yeah. I'm just having bad luck with my reading right now because I started Where the Mountain Meets the Moon, and it's very interesting how it's written. It is basically a lot of short stories within a story, and I'm having trouble getting into it. On top of that, it's very obviously written for younger middle grade, so it states the obvious. There's like no nuance, and whenever it tells a story, it's going to state the theme of the story outright multiple times to make sure you didn't miss it. And I'm just having trouble getting into it. And then I started Mandy, which is also younger side of middle grade, and I think I'm just not in the mood for like really young middle grade right now. So I am gonna start Enola, Holmes, and I Can Make This Promise, and hopefully I like those better. But for now, I'm just gonna pause on Mandy and Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. Maybe I'll pick them up another time. I just think I'm not in the mood right now. So I finished the first Enola Holmes book this morning, and I really enjoyed it. The Enola Holmes series is about the much younger sister of Mycroft and Sherlock Holmes, and these books are basically her adventures. I really enjoyed getting to see the story and seeing Enola grow up throughout this first book. It is set up where there's kind of two mysteries in the first book. The first mystery certainly leaves off in a way that makes me believe this will be a continual thread throughout the series, and the second mystery is one that is introduced and solved within the first book, and I kind of like the setup of that. I'm really intrigued to continue on with the series. I do feel like Enola grows up as a person and becomes a better version of herself throughout the story, and I enjoy getting to see that. My only real complaint about the story is it perpetuates the myth that corsets were used as a torture device. That said, I've not actually read any middle grade books that had corsets in it that does not perpetuate that myth. It's kind of sad actually that that's kind of the state of things. It's definitely not something that would put me off reading the series. I just think it's worth noting. This brings me to the final book on my middle grade March TBR, which is I Can Make This Promise, and I will be starting that this afternoon. So I have finished I Can Make This Promise, and I'm feeling very conflicted about it. There was definitely a good story here, but I almost feel like the story was held back because it was a middle grade contemporary book. The description I got for this book that made me pick it up was it is a story of a native girl who is adopted by white parents, and as she gets older, she's trying to reconnect with her heritage. Here's the thing. That's not the story of our protagonist. That is the story of her mother. And we don't even hear that story until 3/4 of the way through the book. So the story of our protagonist is about a native girl with a native mom and a white dad who's growing up and having friendship troubles and getting braces and realizing her parents are keeping a secret from her. That is 3/4 of the book. That is the main thrust of the story for the majority of the book. The last quarter of the book is an intergenerational family drama talking about the grandmother and the mother and their heritage and the things that happened in their lives. And honestly, that was the most interesting part of the story, and that's what I picked this book up for. I wish that we could have actually had the story that was pitched in the description. Like, I wish the story was from the mom's perspective when she was younger and learning about her heritage. I also think the story doesn't make much sense in the end because the mom grew up not knowing about her heritage and she feels bad about that. And then she does find out about her heritage and she proceeds to not share any of it with her daughter. She is planning on sharing stuff with her daughter when her daughter grows up, but she does not want to tell her daughter like the harsh realities of things. But she doesn't tell her daughter anything. Not what tribe they're from, who their people are, traditions of their people. Like, I feel like the mom could have shared something of herself, even if she did not want to go into the harder to handle details of it. And I'm just not sure why she did that, particularly whenever she herself felt bad for not knowing these things. Overall, I did like the story. I am glad that I read it. I just feel conflicted because I feel like it could have been so much better. It does take a little bit to push through the beginning because the part that I was here for didn't even happen until most of the way through the book. I think it's an important story too. I don't know, I'm just feeling conflicted about it because I do have positive feelings towards the story, but at the same time, I'm like feeling a little disappointed. I think I'm also feeling disappointed because I recently read The Barren Grounds, and that book was amazing and really captivating. And it's also about a very similar story. It's a little bit different. It's set in Canada instead of the Pacific Northwest. It is about a different tribe. There's going to be some different laws. I Can Make This Promise did go into certain laws that were passed and things. And I did really appreciate that. So far, The Barren Grounds hasn't gone quite that in depth. That said, it is a book one of a trilogy, whereas I Can Make This Promise is a standalone. So maybe the sequel to The Barren Grounds will go into more of that. I'm not really sure. I think because I had a story similar to this that I did really, really like, that made me even more disappointed. Like, my expectations were possibly too high for I Can Make This Promise. That said, if you prefer a contemporary story, definitely go with I Can Make This Promise because it is firmly set in our contemporary world, whereas The Barren Grounds is more of a portal fantasy. Part of it takes place in our contemporary world and part of it takes place in a fantastical land. If you like the fantastical elements, definitely read The Barren Grounds. The other thing I want to point out from I Can Make This Promise, and this is definitely not a problem solely of this book, this is a problem of way too many contemporary middle grade books. And that is a scene where the author is trying to influence the readers to do something. In this particular book, it was a scene that's like, hey kids, you should eat your fruits and vegetables. So our protagonist is over at her uncle's birthday party, and the dad comes out of nowhere and is like, Uncle, do you have spinach or kale? Because our daughter, I'm afraid that she's going to be iron deficient if she's not eating these things. And then is shocked when her uncle does not have those things in his house because, like, they're superfoods. How could you not have them and eat them all the time? And I think the scene was like supposed to be played as funny, but there's nothing prior to this and there's nothing after this moment that even references any of this. And I found it really weird because, like, you're over at your uncle's birthday party. Is she really going to be iron deficient if she misses spinach and kale for one meal? And it just kind of felt like the author coming in there and being like, hey kids, eat your fruits and vegetables. The reason I'm mentioning this is when I was a middle grade reader and I was the target audience for these books, I specifically remember scenes like this and I would roll my eyes at them and I would just be like, ugh, the author's trying to get me to eat disgusting food. At the time, I did not like spinach and kale, obviously. No, I remember mushrooms being a thing. Like, there was one author that the author definitely came through the page and said, hey kids, mushrooms are cool too. And I just kind of go, why? I'm fine if these things happened a little more seamlessly in the story. It's just their complete out of nowhere nature that just makes them so obvious. Just come on. But that's it. That is the conclusion of my middle grade March TBR. Well, sort of, because Mandy and Where the Mountain Meets the Moon are still currently paused. I will come back to them when I'm in the mood for them. But I'm actually kind of happy to be finished my middle grade March TBR. Whenever I started March, I was really excited because I was in the mood for middle grade books. I was in the mood for some lighthearted, well, I mean, some of these weren't even as lighthearted, but just for some lighter, easier reads. And now that I had that fulfilled, I'm in the mood for adult books again, and I'm ready to dive in to a longer, chunkier, meatier book with adult problems and things. I'm really happy that I participated in Middle Grade March, and it did give me incentive to read books that I kind of had my eye on, but was not going to read anytime soon, and I did read them, and I'm really happy that I did. And some of these series or authors I will be looking for in the future, but I think I'm going to try to mix adult books and middle grade books in so I can have a break from one and read the other. I've also really enjoyed vlogging. I think this has been one of my favorite styles of videos that I've done, and I definitely want to keep experimenting with my video styles, but I want to do more vlogs because I had a fun time doing this. Let me know if you had a fun time too. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I hope to see you in another video.